Let's talk nutrition. And today on the show joining us is Wean. She's a pediatric nutritionist, and she'll be discussing the right way to wean babies to solids. Hey,
Hi,
good morning.
Good morning.
It's always a pleasure having you join us. Now, explain to us, what is weaning? I mean, it is a natural stage in every baby's development, but we need to understand what it is.
Okay, so weaning essentially is just moving from one phase of food to another. So in the case of babies, you'd be moving from like a liquid diet to a solid diet or a semi-solid diet.
Okay. It's interesting because I had this conversation with a new mom yesterday, and she was all up in her feelings about how she's finding it difficult to, wean her baby to that transition. At what point in a baby's life do you begin this weaning process?
So as early as 6 months.
Okay.
Some people will say 4 months, but most babies are ready at 6 months. Now, readiness is not just a physiological thing, but it also has to be a mental thing.
A mental thing for the mother or for the baby?
Both people.
Okay.
You have to be mentally ready for the journey. And you also have to prepare the baby mentally for the journey as well.
Okay.
Because if you really think about it, they've been on liquids for
all their lives.
Yeah. And so you want to transition them to something else. You have to be patient. You must expect resistance. So most parents just assume that, oh, okay, you're just going to take whatever I give you. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. How do you know when that baby is ready? Because for some babies, it happens naturally. And then for some babies, you have to forcefully, you have to force them. How do you know when that baby is ready? And do you also advise forcing? Because, I mean, for some mothers, that's like their option, basically.
Right. So I would say this in 2 ways. I wouldn't advise pushing the child to wean.
Okay.
But I would say that you have to be really patient, you have to be creative, you have to be consistent, and you have to be persistent.
Okay.
Most of us are very impatient with these little ones. And so you have to think of creative ways to come up with the meals. You also have to remember that it's not about the quantity that you're offering, but about the quality of what you're offering.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So you have to always say to yourself, okay, we had 1 spoon here, 2 spoons here, that's fine. Moving on to another 3 spoons here, 4 spoons here. Today we just wanted milk, that's fine. Because again, you have to remember that babies are human, so they will have moods as well. And sometimes today might just not be a good day to eat something. Other ways of readiness would include the child sitting up on their own, unsupported, being able to grab things. And then the most important is something we call loss of thrust reflex. Essentially what that means is when a child is breastfeeding or taking formula, they are sucking, they're not swallowing. So when you lose the thrust reflex, it shows that you can swallow now. And the only way to show that is by using a spoon and a ball. When you use a bottle, the child is lazy, and so they don't take the solids properly.
Okay. What are the first kind of foods that you would, introduce to a baby?
Pretty much anything.
Okay, pretty much anything?
Well,
like semo?
Yes,
Oh, really? Wow.
They can have semo, they can have amala, they can have rice, they can have potatoes, they can have yam. The focus, again, like I mentioned, should be on the quality of what you're offering.
Okay.
And then, of course, making it palatable for the person you're feeding. Okay. So, of course, it can't be like fried or, deep fried or something like that, but at least like a semi-solids to start, good textures that the child will appreciate, avoiding things like honey. And avoiding
honey.
salt.
Okay.
Yes. Excessive seasonings because their kidneys and livers can't take it just yet.
Yeah.
And then just playing around with, flavors in terms of your vegetables, your fruits. You don't want to overdo too many things, so I always advise nothing more than 3 or 4 ingredients altogether. Okay. And this includes their breast milk or formula in addition to the meal that you're preparing. Okay,
please, let's go back a little bit. Are you saying that you would infuse the breast milk into the meals?
Exactly. So there's this myth that when you transition, you're supposed to transition into formula. That's not realistic. You can actually maintain only offering breast milk in addition to the solids you're offering the child as well. Because it contains the same ingredients and still offers the same amount of nutrition that the child was getting even in the first 6 months of life.
Wow. This is quite interesting. I mean, like, are you joking? Okay, so for mothers who, who's having difficulty, going through that transition with the child, what advice do you have for them? Because I mean, okay, a baby's 6 months. Let me put myself in as a case study here. Mm-hmm. If I have a child who's over 6 months, and I expect that, okay, by now you should start taking solids, and baby's like, no, I don't want to yet. Is that a cause for worry?
I wouldn't say that there's a cause for worry, because like I mentioned before, the child doesn't actually know that they don't want it. What you need to be focusing on is trying to figure out who this child is in terms of the solids you're offering.
Okay.
For example, there are some children who absolutely hate anything that's sweet. However, that's like the first immediate focus for most parents. Oh, it has to be sweet. I've got to sweeten it somehow. I've got to add some kind of sweetener to it. Meanwhile, your child might actually just want things very bland. Sometimes it might be the temperature, it might be too warm, right? They want it cool. I remember, I think a patient a couple years ago, the biggest struggle the mom was having was she was always making sure the food was hot. And the little boy wanted it to be in the fridge just before he had his meal.
Wow.
So sometimes that's the difference between your struggle and your success.
So as a mother, you have to be very intentional and you have to be very observant with your child.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now, let's talking about diets. What other diets would you suggest? Okay, so you talked about semi-solids, but you have to help us break it down to what kinds of semi-solids and how it can be prepared, so that women just watching right now don't think, oh, so they said semo, let me go and make semo now and then start to, then force it into the child's mouth. So explain that process. Like, how do you, so, for example, semo, how do you prepare it, to make it palatable for the child?
I would say be as close to the ground as possible. What I mean, be as natural as possible with whatever you're offering the child.
Okay.
So if you're doing something like semo right now, you want to make sure that it's not pre-packaged. You want to make sure that you're getting it from a good source.
Okay.
And you also want to make sure that you're using clean water, your hands are clean, separate utensils, things like that.
Okay.
And most importantly, prepare it in a manner where the child will appreciate the food.
Thank you so much, Ifeanyi. This has been such an insightful conversation, and I'm sure that everyone watching right now learns one or two from this conversation. And of course, it continues on social media at TVC Connect. If you have questions for Ifeanyi, please go ahead and drop them in the comment section. All right, for now, we take a break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.